most people cannot get their heads around. How do you design and build in mass production a 2,000-pound airplane that flies for 15 minutes and it's garbage? That's hard.
All players, low down, active, bullseye, 1327, for tactical. Lights on.
Welcome to The Merge, where we make sense of defense in an enjoyable way. Last episode, we brought you some tech history. Today's episode is much, much different. We're going to highlight a small company doing big things and the founder story. It's wild. Started as a race car driver, pivoted into electric motorcycles and airplanes, did a whole bunch of stuff, set 8 world records on land, another 6 or so world records in the air. And all this was back before electric vehicles were cool. Then he jumped careers again into defense tech in a company called Silent Arrow. And that's why we have him on the show today. Are you excited yet? I bet you are. Before we dig in, reminder to like, follow, and subscribe to the show. And then please, please, please do not forget the best intel out there. Sign up for the Merge newsletter. Hits your inbox with laser-guided knowledge bombs twice a week. The Pentagon reads it, and so should you. Okay, off to the show. Chip, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike.
This has been a long time coming. I was looking at our messages and stuff. We've been chatting for literally 12 months to get you on the show. You've been a busy man.
It's like good or bad, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad we actually waited a year because 2024 has been quite a year for you and the company. But before we talk about Silent Arrow, we have to have the origin story because it just sounds insane. So, Chip, you started as a race car driver?
Yeah, we try not to talk about that because, the Pentagon won't take you seriously. You sound like some kind of evil Knievel guy,
Your Wikipedia does make you sound like an electric version of Evil Knievel. So,
yeah, we're trying to land Pentagon contracts. They don't want to give them away to, lunatics. So,
hey, you said it, not me.
There was a period of time where we raced cars and then gas motorcycles, then built electric motorcycle and electric airplanes. And then the Navy was basically watching what we were doing. And we ended up with a contract with the Marines to develop Silent Arrow. So it was circuitous, but here we are.
So the electric stuff, I just want to hit on it for I sense 2025 is going to have a little bit of a theme from your pre-defense technology life. So I think there's something there. So I think the backstory is going to be very important maybe in the future. We'll see.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, let's go.
All right. So it's 2011, 2012 timeframe. You decided to start this company called Silent Arrow. Did the Marine Corps come to you, or did you kind of have this idea and go to them? Like, how did that start?
Our company name is Yates Electrospace Corporation. So we started with the electric airplane. We built an electric airplane in 2012, ended up setting 8 world records, I think, with it. Got a bunch of patents, worked on mid-air recharging technology. And that's where the Navy started looking at us. So in 2012, there was no Silent Arrow. We were just doing electric airplane records and technology development. The Navy in China Lake came to us and said, let's take this the next step further. So we did a contract with the Navy in China Lake. And in that process, we ran into some requirements that the Marines had put out. And it was sort of an Afghanistan-esque requirement, kind of the Marcus Luttrell story. You got guys who are cut off from supply and they're running low on ammo. How do you get ammo to them without using parachutes, which can't give the C-130 that much standoff, puts pilots at risk and stuff like that. So the Marines came and said, hey, we noticed that you're crazy. We like that you're insane. How would you get 500 pounds over to some Marines who were under fire accurately? And it has to be disposable. And that was in 2015. So that kind of got my juices flowing. I wasn't an aircraft designer per se at the very beginning, but they said, we've got this impossible set of requirements. Can you do it? And so, yeah, we started with a prototype that we showed the Marines that was basically 2 trash cans that we had bought from Target. And it was like, those are the fuselage though. Now stay with me, Mike. We have a little trash can and a big trash can, and we put them together, and then we got some wings from a model airplane, and but there was a concept in there somewhere. And we showed them these trash cans. And at the end of the day, there was about 500,000 of sort of like R&D money that came out of that. So those are my $500,000 trash cans. I wish I still had them, but that got us started, and that was 2015. We didn't do much in 2016, and then the Marines had a phase 2 little pile of money in 2017. So I like to say, in the history of the company, I started full time paying myself a salary in 2017. All before that, it was just all like for fun. It was volunteer. Helping the Marines was awesome. So September 2017 is when we really started Silent Arrow.
The first time I ever heard of you was 2018, and it was a headline. I was like, "What the hell is this?" It was a Marine Corps headline about a small disposable 700-pound cargo delivery drone that was cost under $10,000, which is, you look at the metrics of standoff and weight and cost, and you're like, man, what's going on here?
Oh yeah, well, and the requirements grew like they always do. So you know that there's a requirement creep always in defense tech. The 700 became 1,000 pounds, and then the 1,000 pounds became 1,500, and then we ended up at 2,000. So like this is a Silent Arrow GD 2000. So it's glider, disposable, 2,000 pounds. Yeah, it was funny because the wings we designed originally were for 700 pounds. So you can imagine the first time we tried to fly this, the wings broke off and it plummeted to the ground, and it was pretty interesting. We had a lot of like celebratory whiskey inside, maybe in the fuselage, and some T-shirts and some hats that we were going to autograph after all the success. But it crashed straight into the ground, and all the T-shirts and hats got soaked in whiskey. So we had a alcohol-soaked crash scene. Was the first, and here we are.
The 2,000 pounder, the GD 2000. I saw something like 2 months ago. It's in the Smithsonian now, right?
Well, it's funny. We were talking to the Smithsonian for a long time about the electric airplane. You know, it has 8 world records. You know, it's the first electric airplane to ever break 200. I was the pilot, so it was kind of an honor for me. And we took the world's fastest electric airplane title away from the French. We held it for about 3.5 years, then we lost it to the Germans. Then we lost to Siemens, which was Walter Extra. Mr. Extra was flying an Extra and beat us. But yeah, it was just you know, kind of a crazy time. And yeah, so we had this conversation. Do you want our electric airplane? We think it's pretty cool. And I'll summarize for the Smithsonian where they, in my ears, I heard them saying, "We don't want your stupid electric airplane," right? So we still have it. Not that important after all. But no, they're great people, and we've had an ongoing conversation with them, and they're doing some new displays at the Hazy Center with drone technology and defense technology, and they said, you know, hey, we don't want your electric airplane, but we want Silent Arrow. So that was a couple of year process actually to get it donated and to get it in, and now it's there, and we're looking forward to going to DC and checking it out.
Yeah, that's over by the Dulles, right?
Yeah, it's the big Hazy Center. That's the one. I mean, that's you got a space shuttle in there. You got SR-71 Blackbird sitting there on the, you know, it's where you go.
That place is amazing.
Yeah, they ran out of space at the National Mall, so it makes sense now. They've got a beautiful collection there.
All right, so let's back up real quick and talk about G2000, which is in the background behind you. Give us a rundown of like generically, like what are the performance kind of, what does it do, and then how do you do it?
It hits the requirements, right? It's disposable. It glides. It's got 4 wings. Maybe you can see them here. They all fold in and like a Swiss Army knife, and then they turn upside down and they go down in the fuselage. So it's really easy to ship it. It's 2 foot by 2 foot by 8 foot. You can fit 80 in a sea container. So, you know, you ship 80 to the battle space and then pull the lid off, turn it the other way around, set it on the ground, fill the fuselage up with 1,500 pounds of whatever you want, put the lid back on right way up, and then out it comes from a C-130. So, and this is our oldest product. So now it's flown from C-130H, MC-130J, Airbus. We have a program, A400M, USASOC, the U.S. Army, First Special Forces Group. Just come out of a C-27J at Yuma. That was an awesome drop, 40 knot winds, and we landed within 60 meters of the pin. So it's it really works. It does what it says it's going to do. We built 73 of these, and it's transitioned to full rate production in the UK with one of our manufacturing partners called the Mel Group. And so it's off and running. But yeah, we designed it for 8-to-1 glide ratio, and it's not quite there. It's probably about 7-to-1.
But still, that puts you at about 30 miles or so, right?
Yeah, it's still pretty good. But what we're seeing is people migrating over to longer standoff with the near peer fight, or at least we have a near peer struggle. Let's call it that. So in PACOM and Indo-PACOM, working with SOCPAC, and they're very interested in how do we get between 200 and 500 nautical miles, not 30. So there's a great place for this. We have a lot of programs. We have 16 international partners with the GD 2000. So, we're not in a struggle like Afghanistan right now, at least that we know about. So the needs have shifted over to, let's get a silent arrow to go 500 nautical miles, and that's what we're doing now.
Nice. In between that, there was a pit stop for a smaller variant, right? The precision guided bundle.
Yeah, you've done your research. Yeah, we don't have anything on our website on that. We've done some cyber type warfare missions with that. So it's not on the website. I think it will be next year, but that's really neat. The fuselage actually springs open, and then the wings spring and the tail springs. And the reason for all that sort of nonsense is that it has to come out of a side door. It has to come out the side door of a classified airplane without a ramp. So the normal, big silent arrow GD 2000 isn't going to do that. So we shrank it down. It's got a round fuselage cross section. Yeah, so it's a real like origami thing that springs open, and so yeah, we've flown 15 of those already. We're building more. We got partnerships going with that. That's just a little, and again, disposable, fully autonomous. 4 wings, ailerons, elevators, and the flares, does a landing, and then you take your stuff and walk away from it. So it's our little guy. Yeah, it's about 500 pounds.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Before we go to the long range stuff, there's some interesting experiences that you've gone through with a lot of SBIR, whether it's through AFWorks, direct to phase 2 stuff. But there's one other I picked up on doing some research. You got paid to go do an eval overseas a couple years ago. Tell us about that. Because most people think of SBIRs as like, we're going to develop a prototype or a proof of concept or do some research. But you got paid to go do a deployed eval of your prototypes, right?
Well, we've done a couple. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. But we did one.
What's even better? Tell us your secrets. How are you getting buy-in and getting paid to go demonstrate these capabilities?
Oh gosh, the secret. Well, the secret is beat your head against a wall 12 hours a day for 7 years, and then you know, you don't know. Yeah, I think if there's a secret, we always do what we say we're going to do. So that's important. I think nowadays there's a lot of PowerPoint engineering. It's pretty easy now with 3D modeling to come up with concepts quickly and sell them to people, but not be able to deliver, perhaps. And I think that's where we're a little more blue collar than that. We're out here with grinders and welders and building airplanes and flying airplanes. And like I said earlier, joking around, but the first one crashed, why did it crash? So that we're out there smashing up stuff to get a solution that works for the warfighter. I see a lot of people that are a little too white collar, sort of like, what about this idea? What about that idea? And so what we did is we just crawl, walk, run. We started with helicopter long lines. Okay. So the military was like, hey, here's a little bit of money. Show us if this concept is viable. And so we established a flight test facility in Pendleton, Oregon, and at the Pendleton UAS test site up there. And there's a lot of guys up there. There's Airbus was there with Vahana, and there's Andurils up there now, and Amazon, and there's a lot of people up there. So it's become a hub of drone R&D. And so we started there, and we use a Huey with a long line to literally like pick up Silent Arrow and drop it and get the software nailed. So I think the military appreciated that we were willing to do that crawl phase, right? We didn't say, here's an invention, please put it on your priceless C-130 and see if it works. We made sure it worked, and then we took it to the C-130. So we did one in PACOM at a partner nation in PACOM, and then we've done a bunch in the Middle East. And so the Middle East was more like C-130H stuff. PACOM was MC-130J. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff going overseas. I think as the U.S. sort of pivots to a posture of a near peer long standoff, the rest of the world isn't there yet. If you look at like India and Pakistan, you've got a tight border conflict. If you look at Japan and China, you've got these kind of disputed islands. You've got overlapping air defense zones, ADIZ, between Japan and China. And so how do you resupply those disputed islands without directly overflying them, which could draw a retaliatory response from your competitor? And so we're seeing the rest of the world looking at sales of the GD2000, whereas the U.S. loves it, right? Hey, we'll take some. But the U.S. is sort of like, how do we get them to go further? And the rest of the world is like, hey, we'll take the gliders.
So your Airbus A400M is like, that's big news. That's obviously like a very big prime, if you will, in Europe. How did you make that happen? That's it. Again, were you beating your head against the wall?
Well, most days are good here without too much head beating. I think they came to us after one of the press releases. I'm not completely sure the origin of that, but it's Airbus Defense and Space came to us, and they have an interesting business model that they follow, which is a little bit of a service model. So in the U.S., the U.S. military is quite hands-on, capable. Hey, we got it from here. Thank you very much. We read the manual. Goodbye. In Europe, I get the sense that they're not as active, right, as the U.S. Air Force. Say if you take one of the European air forces, they don't have as much space to do test drops. They're not in as many conflicts as we are, and so they're more apt to say, we like silent aero, but we want a large tier one to procure it for us, to prepare it for us, to mission plan it for us, to deliver it to the field, for testing and evaluation, and then collect it up afterwards. So we're seeing that emerging a little bit in the European market, where the U.S. is like, yeah, we got it from here.
All right, well, let's talk about the longer range one from the U.S. Speaking of that, so earlier this year, 2024, you were awarded an AFWERX contract. That was a prototype or a concept development, right?
We've had a bunch. It was hard to win in the beginning. The SBIR contracts they're pretty hard to win, actually. And then it seems like once you start winning them, there's a formula. And then even AFWERX seems to remember, as an institutional memory, hey, these guys delivered for us. So I don't know if it's true or not, but it seemed to get easier. So we've won, I don't know, at least 5 SBIRs, maybe more. So I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but yeah, so we have 2 powered silent arrows that came through SBIRs. There's a 200 nautical mile one called the CLS 200. We just call it Contested Logistics System 200 nautical miles. That carries 500 pounds, 200 nautical miles. That was a direct to phase 2 win. That's our first direct to phase 2 win that we've had. Those are much harder to win than a phase 1. So that was nice because it was an announcement that the Air Force had made, a competitive announcement. And so a number of companies competed and we ended up winning that. So that was nice. The other longer range one we have is between 300 and 500 nautical miles. So the requirements originally were 300 nautical miles. They came through a SBIR phase 1, and now we're in a SBIR phase 2 on that, where we're building and flying them. Again, the creep of the requirements, right? So, hey, 300 miles sounded good when we awarded that, but 500 sounds better, right? Oh, okay.
It's like a 60% increase, and
yeah. But you got the right guy for that. We just said, okay, well, we're carrying 1,000 pounds, 300 nautical miles, so we traded 150 pounds for fuel. So now we're carrying 850 pounds, 500 nautical miles, and it worked. It might not have worked, right? I mean, they could come up with a number that we're like, oh, we can't do that. But that worked. So that's real interesting, because the original concept for silent arrow is how do you get, beans, bullets, and whatever batteries that the Marines might want in a firefight. And now it's run the gamut. So we're carrying a lot of electronic warfare devices into the battle space, streaming data back to the good guys of what's happening in the battle space.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is there are a lot of drones that we're seeing in the media where ISR drones, right? Small drone, but very capable. But those type of assets certainly don't have 500 nautical mile standoff capabilities, right? So how do you get all these new high tech, loitering things, even loitering munitions, ISR drones, cyber type devices? How do you get those things into the battle space? And luckily, the Pentagon has said, hey, we think Silent Arrow is the SUV, that's going to carry all this stuff into the battle space and then deploy it, and then it doesn't have to come home because even the powered ones are disposable, if you can believe that.
I know you called it the SUV of drones. I think it's kind of the C-130 of drones, really, because it started doing cargo, and now, like, just like the C-130 has been adapted, it's got like 70 something variants now. Like, that's kind of sounds like what you're going for.
It's so ugly, it's embarrassing. It's cool. It's cool to have, like, this Genie 2000 is the first airplane I've designed myself from a clean sheet, and to have it in the Smithsonian is obviously this huge honor. But I think about it, I'm like, damn, that's ugly. That is ugly. So that we're memorializing this thing for all time. We're saying, like, this is something that, and now I wish I had made it a little swoopier.
Is the CLS 200 or 300 swoopier?
No.
You're not learning your own lesson.
Did not learn my lesson. Yeah, I think the CLS 200 will end up in the Smithsonian too. The PGB also might. We're having those kind of discussions. So it seems like they want a package to show glider powered, super powered. So
I mean, you have the chance to show, like, not only the genealogy, but like the evolution of, like, ugly to not ugly. So, like,
yeah,
I mean, there's an opportunity there for you to not mess it up again.
I know. Yeah, I need to bring in, like, I need to bring in Burt Rutan. He's a Smithsonian god. Like, let's put some canard wings on this and make it swoopy. But I'm not against swoopy. It's just expensive. We're
if it looks expensive, it generally is. That's a kind of an aviation truism.
Well, it's funny because we get, we've been at trade shows. We had this in London and stuff, and people come up and they, aerospace engineers, people that have 10 times the talent that I have, and say, hey, why don't you make this out of carbon fiber? Why are you using these regular rivets? Why are the wings covered in vinyl? I mean, basically the wings are shrink wrapped, and it's painful for them to see an airframe succeeding that is so simple and MacGyver-y and frankly ugly, but it's brutally effective. Some guys, I can talk them off the edge, and some guys just walk away shaking their heads going, I don't understand why it can't be carbon fiber. But I think that's why we're succeeding, is because most people cannot get their heads around how do you design and build in mass production a 2,000-pound airplane that flies for 15 minutes and it's garbage. That's hard.
I probably wouldn't leave it that in your pitch deck, but yeah.
Well, let's pivot to pitch decks, So we came out with this and we had a contract and stuff. So we talked to some venture capitalists and said, like, here's what we're doing. And, defense tech was not exciting in 2017. This is pre-Anduril, pre-Shield AI. Defense tech, not exciting. I'm not a particularly lovable CEO. I'm a little bit brutal and let's get the job done type of guy. I'm not a Silicon Valley, let's hold hands kind of guy. And we just couldn't raise money. We just could not raise money. It was sort of like friends and family, here's a couple $100K. And so we should be out of business. We should have been out of business a long time ago. But the merit of Silent Arrow and what we had done and the fact that we always deliver what we say we're going to do, I think carried us. And so the company's built entirely on customer revenues and selling airplanes. So
That's amazing.
We failed to raise money, but it worked out.
Yeah, because I mean, you own it, right?
Yeah. I still have all the stock. We couldn't give it away,
Correct me if I'm wrong. I saw in one of the press releases for the CLS variants, I can't remember which one, it said extended range, powered, takeoff, and potential recovery. Is that in the cards?
Yes and no. So let's get back to requirement creep. So, CLS 200.
It's starting to look like an airplane.
Yeah. So CLS 200, right, was an Air Force program, and so I want to speak for the Air Force, but in general, they're happy to just throw stuff out of C-130s. So it most certainly does not need to be able to take off. The trick came. We have a lot of stuff going with the Army guys, and so Army guys, a lot of stuff would come from an Air Force asset, but there's a desire to be able to be more autonomous and be able to make decisions in the field and get these things going. And same goes for the Navy. Can you get a silent arrow to take off from a ship, the deck of a ship, or a aircraft carrier, or something like that? So you're going to love this piece. So we look at like, okay, fine, let's put in landing gear and all stuff. And it's just inconsistent with what we're doing. It takes the cost. It's too high. And so for a variety of reasons, we ruled out that it can take off by itself. So what we did was we bought a Tesla ludicrous mode Tesla and stripped it. And so we're using the skateboard. I think they call it a skateboard. We call it a skateboard. It's just
exactly.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I'm not a Tesla guy. So so I drove it for one day and I thought it was pretty good. I mean, you drive around this thing and you can win any drag race. And then, so I drove it for one day and then we stripped it. But yeah, so we're using the skateboard. So it's 0 to 60 in like 2.6 seconds. So our takeoff mission is sort of 0 to 100 to 0. And we'll get it on the website at some point, but it's basically like it's got a rack on it at 5 degrees, and Silent Arrow sits on the skateboard and gets accelerated on the ground, right? And you can put on knobby tires for a sandy thing, or like slick tires for aircraft carrier deck, or anything the Army wants. You just change the tires.
I've got so many pictures in my mind right now. I was not expecting that question to go that direction. You strip down a Tesla, put on tires, and you basically using that as your launch platform. You just put the drone on top of it. That is insane. You have to send me a picture so I can put it into this episode. You have to send me a picture of this, and then you can put it on the website after you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's at our place in Boise. I saw it over Thanksgiving. It's pretty interesting. So we'll do that as a demonstration. We're going to demonstrate that at our Pendleton, Oregon facility. We actually have a 5,000 foot paved runway on a private ranch that we use. So we'll accelerate, take off, and stop the car on the runway. But then, as Tesla's autonomous driving capability, so it's going to be autonomous. So you'll go in and just say, go this direction, 0 to 100 to 0. And the Tesla will do it, and then we'll fly away from the Tesla. So, yeah, we'll demonstrate that, and then if the military is interested, then we would approach Tesla directly and say, "Can we just buy the skateboards instead of stripping down all these cars and wasting the leather seats?"
I'm sure there's like a secondary market for those pieces, though. I mean, you
there's got to be,
or is it in the backyard of the pile right now?
Yeah, I feel bad. Yeah, our guy that we have stripping it, he had trouble getting started because it's like, this thing is so nice, man. I don't want to.
Yeah, that's insane. Elon, if you're listening, Elon, please, cut the line with the skateboards and help Chip out here, because I don't think anyone wants to see brand new Teslas come off the line get ripped back apart. So
no, there's no sense in that. Yeah, Tesla seems like the kind of company that would say, yeah, we'll sell you some. I don't know.
That's insane. When do you think that's all gonna do a demo for it?
So the car is going to be done, before Pendleton is ready for, Pendleton gets snowed in. Like the ranch we use is at 4,000 feet. So when we get up there, we can't test in January. We tried before, but it's too icy. So February we start looking, but March usually we have to snowplow the ranch and then we can start using it. April for sure. We've got some Paycom overseas guys coming in June, and then we're doing the CLS 200 and 300 tests between June and August. So the car is going to be done before the runway is paved, put it that way. So yeah, it'll come together. We're going to ship it to Pendleton and just put it in our warehouse. We have a full-time facility in Pendleton for flight tests. So the Tesla's going to sit there for a couple months while it thaws out.
Once you get the skateboard ready, if you just videotape it doing like a runway run, like 0 to 100 to 0, like that will go viral. But even before you get the drone on it and everything, the fact that you stripped down a brand new car to make this autonomous takeoff sled out of a Tesla, like you got to do something with that. There's an audience that wants to see that. I want to see it.
We used to do all kinds of social media, especially when I was doing the world records, the electric motorcycle and airplane. And what we found is the government does not love social media all the time, you know? So,
I don't know. Times have changed. I mean, like defense tech advertising, and I mean, you should see some of the stuff that's out there now. It's great. It's like the
yeah,
Cold War defense advertising all over again, where it was just way out there, and people were like, "This is great."
yeah.
Yeah,
We have had people say to us, hey, do this press release and then monitor who hits the press release. And we want to see what um, competitive countries are looking at our press releases, you know? So yeah,
yeah,
now the press release is a tool to see who's watching you, you know? It's interesting.
yeah. Yep, I am familiar with that as well. So it sounds like 2025 in the spring and summer is going to be awesome. Assume all that goes well. What do you think's going to hit next?
So the CLS 300, which is now the 500, 500 nautical mile, we're working with the US and partner nations on that. And we're adding like kind of launch tubes and stuff to that. So I think there's going to be a period of, um, it's almost like a rapid dragon on a silent arrow platform, you know? So I think there's going to be a period of integration, if you will, rather than let's just keep designing airframes, you know, as many as we can. So I think in the fourth quarter of 2025, we're going to be doing a lot of integration, again, US and PACOM-based partner nations on the long range stuff. And then we did early on do a wide body version, which is a 60% scale up of this. So it's 60% larger than this, which is absolutely massive. Each wing is 12 feet long. And we only
Oh,
built
wow.
one, and we shipped it to a customer in the Middle East. And that's really interesting because that sort of like lands in the battle space and then something drives out of it, you know? But there's a renewed interest in that for like PACOM EABO, I think they call it. You know,
Mhm.
we need to get to an atoll and set up a improvised landing strip or a runway, and we need to move gear, equipment, and people to that location, and then get them out, right? And then and kind of ditch everything there. And so the Silent Arrow wide body, I believe, is going to be in demand for that, and we're going to be working on that. I think in the fourth quarter as well. You know, if you look at that portfolio, that's 5 products. It's like GD2000, a wide body, and then the SAPGB, which is Silent Arrow Precision Guided Bundle. That's the small 500-pound side door capability, and then the CLS 200, which it is what it is. But then the CLS 300 is becoming the CLS 500. You know, and you know that's a pretty good, you know, that's a pretty good offering that we cover everything up to 2,500 pounds or so. If you need more than that, then you're probably back on parachutes or landing a rotorcraft in the battle space or something, you know. But right now we're up to 2,500 pounds. That's kind of the niche that we've created, and disposable.
And you were in contested logistics before people were calling it contested logistics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Every so often you update the PowerPoint deck with the latest buzzwords. You know, it's
Yeah, the
like
latest buzzword.
why do they have so many logistics under attack? You know,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
yeah,
all
I
this
remember
stuff.
that
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So got we got to update that, but yeah, it's great. It's you know, the Marines pulled us in, and now we're working with pretty much everybody, and it's been a heck of a journey.
Man, it sounds like it, but it sounds like you're hitting your stride and you're going from a small company that's kind of bootstrapping and making ends meet. And you sound like this year, it sounds like you got a lot of irons in the fire that are, you know, I want to see this Tesla skateboard launch a Silent Arrow. I really want to see this now.
I love that the Tesla's the takeaway from this. You know, hey, we got Chip Yates, and you know, drone inventor on. You know, and the takeaway is like, he chopped up a Tesla. This guy is insane.
I will say, coming full circle, when we started this episode, we talked about your origins into electric motorcycle and aircraft speed and setting records. I didn't know when we started this, I didn't know where this interview was going to go. I had no idea that you had an electric car that you'd stripped down as well. So it's come full circle.
Telegraphs the way I think, right? Which is like, you know, I'm an engineer, right? I'm an inventor, you know, and I've got a bunch of patents and all the stuff that normal engineer inventors would have. But I invent as a last resort. It's much more efficient to be sort of someone who can look at what's out there and combine it maybe in a clever way. I love like automotive OEM stuff. We try to use that whenever we can. If you look at General Motors and you're taking some of their, powertrain stuff or their sensors, that stuff is just so proven.
And it's already got the economies of scale behind it. So the price,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we don't brag about invention here. It's sort of like, let's get the job done. Let's make it perfect, but it doesn't have to be any better than what the mission requires. And I think that's our niche, is really like, imagine an airplane that flies 15 minutes and then it's garbage. And that's, don't put anything else on it that isn't required for that mission. And so, if we have to invent, we'll invent something and file a patent on it and everything. But really, we're trying to take technologies that are available and combine them in a neat way.
One thing I just thought of, and it's obviously an obvious consideration if I had cargo in a silent aero cargo drone. If the airplane is garbage when it lands, like you said, disposable, a nicer way to say it, is the cargo not get destroyed? Like, how does that work?
This platform can do a full stall landing, so we can arrest our sink rate to 0 in the flare. We haven't quite gotten there, but the latest one we did in Paycom, it was carrying 1,000 pounds of cargo, nailed the landing, just flared, touchdown, and then it slid to a stop. It didn't. Sometimes it'll catch a wing. It's landing in a desert. It'll hit a rock or a bush and it'll spin around, or it might flop upside down and you flop it right side up, and then you take your stuff. As long as your stuff is okay. So this one and the wide body version of this have the wingspan and wing loading to be able to do full stall landings. That's a super slick soft landing. The PGB does not. It's too highly wing loaded. So we've written a lot of software to get that thing on the ground safely. I'll give you an example. Its best glide speed is fully loaded is like 92 knots, and its stall speed is 96 knots. That's insane. So we have all these pitot tubes, we better know how fast we're going. And the wings are covered in vortex generators,
Oh man.
But it does not have the elevator authority in the flare moment to be able to do a full stall flare. It'll, you'll stall and then it'll roll. So that one, we came up with some software that we called a snatch flare. So it'll come down, it's coming down, and its best glide sink rate is about 3,500 feet a minute, which is, in a human airplane, you're crashing and dying, right? So, So we're coming down 3,500 feet a minute, which is the best it can do. And then we'll lower the nose to get a little energy and then just flare it, like right when our LiDAR sees the ground, we'll flare it, and then we'll hit the ground. And, you hit pretty hard, but the cargo survives and you're good to go. So yeah, we use a lot of, foam and impact stuff. And, if your cargo survives and it's where you want it, that's a success. If the airframe is damaged while it's protecting the cargo, that's its job. That's okay. If it looks like a crash site, that's okay. The goal is to get you the stuff.
That's awesome. I was just doing the math in my head. That's 3,500 feet per minute. That's like 3 to 4 times what a military rated parachute descent is. You're flying fast.
I'm a pilot, right? And so when I got my pilot's license, they're like, hey, passengers like where you descend no more than 1,000 feet a minute or something, and if you're IFR, I tend to descend at 500 feet a minute, on an IFR flight plan.
Yep.
So, 500 feet a minute, 1,000 feet a minute, 3,500 feet a minute is like, oh man, this is bad.
What about the powered ones? What do you think those will come in at?
The powered plants that we've got our own custom propellers and power plants. And so we aim to be about 1.3 over V stall. So they're going to be flying around 100 to 110 knots or something like that. But they've got big wings, and it's more like this. It's more like a Genie 2000 with an engine and propeller.
I've seen the little the picture, the concept art. I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a little misleading. Like we did that a while ago, and we were just not ready to show pictures of the real thing. But we have the fuselages here. We have engine test stands. We have custom carbon fiber propellers, and even that, it's a carbon fiber propeller. It costs about $1,000 to make, and it's trash after a 3-hour flight or something like that.
This conversation went so many directions I was not expecting. That usually doesn't happen. So I'm so glad we finally got you on the show, Chip. we'll put a link in the show notes for Silent Arrow, and you got some great stuff on the website. You've had obviously exciting company, exciting progress. You've had an exciting life leading up to this. You even have a TED Talk, if I remember right. So with that in mind, I'll just give you that perspective as we kind of wrap up here. If we zoom way out, one last question. If you could go back and look at, Chip Yates from 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, when the Marine Corps kind of came to you or the Navy came to you, say, hey, what do you think about getting into defense tech? What kind of advice looking back would you give that younger Chip?
Oh my gosh, don't do it. What are you, crazy? Yeah, let's see. I want to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 7 years. Yeah, it's been great. I think we did it right. I do think we spent a lot of time trying to raise money. And that was a bummer. Yeah, we brought in Harvard trained, CFOs and we really tried to look, like an investable venture capital company and I'm just not that guy. I'm not a venture capital guy. I don't say the right things. I don't do the right things. I get up and kind of do whatever I want every day. so I think we wasted a lot of time and energy and money talking to VCs. But then again, nowadays, VCs are more open to defense plays. So we'll see if Anduril can get profitable. Then that will be like a solid, hey, VCs lean forward on their skis and this thing came good. They're winning a lot of contracts. They're small potatoes contracts for the amount they've raised. So I want to see them get some $1 billion programs of record. And if they do, then I think the VCs are gonna look at that as a point of inspiration for investing in more defense tech plays. But drones used to be good to invest in, then they weren't, now they are. It's a little bit of a fashion industry what VCs will invest in. And we were in the wrong place, the wrong time, and we had to get it done with real customers.
Well, it sounds like if you hit all your targets in 2025, you might be looking for some investment to scale if you hit all these things.
Sure. Yeah. Then you're in private equity, and it's a different.
Yeah, that's like a whole different episode.
I don't know if I like private equity any better.
Yeah.
That's been great.
Chip, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. That was a great conversation.
Absolutely.
You owe me a video of this Tesla when it's ready, but you owe me a picture near term.
There you go.
That's going to be awesome. All right. Well, there you have it. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.